Welcome back to the Dropout Drop-In. I'm producer Liz.
And I'm Jordan. We're talking about Misfits and Magic.
Episode 1, Season 2, and a Christmas episode. So kind of like that was 1.5. We're on 2 now.
It's British, so Christmas episodes don't count.
Christmas episodes don't count other than introducing you to your favorite NPC of all time.
Yes.
We'll get there. This is the Dropout Drop-In Podcast, where we typically talk about all things Dropout, and for the next few weeks we're talking about the new season of Dimension 20. And this season we are going to be bringing on special guests. We're going to be reacting to the episodes with all of you, and most importantly, we're going to be celebrating the magic that is Aabria Iyengar with some special Aabria blessed dice that I picked up this week in New York City.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting.
Tell us all about, how did Aabria bless those dice? How did that happen, Liz?
So when you go see 20-Sided Tavern, and there is a huge monster mouth, for lack of a better word, you'll see it in the vlog I'm going to post, that's filled with all of these dice that are free for people to take. So I took some, and Aabria was saying hi to folks in the audience, and we were chatting, and I asked Aabria to roll the dice. I'll toss the clip in here.
I've been rolling so badly, but I will do it.
Okay, they're coming back to Canada.
Okay, let's go. All right, we've got an 8 and a 7.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing.
It's a 15.
That's
gotta be okay.
Together. It's a die pool. Has it not been the whole time? For me.
So I thought it'd be fun if we started every episode of the Dropout Drop-In by rolling the dice and seeing what Aabria Magic has in store for this week's episode. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, if we beat 8 and 7, are we like above Aabria then? Or are we,
I was thinking it's more of a prediction for like the chaos of this episode, or
Fair.
like, rating where we're at with this week's episode, but maybe some of that too. Okay, so immediately beating Aabria with a 16 and a 12.
oh boy, I was gonna say 16, we're already above her total rolled. Yeah,
It's true.
Yeah.
Her total rolled a solid 15. You know what? I think that's actually pretty reflective of how I felt about episode 1, Jordan, because I thought this was one of the strongest episodes 1 in recent Dimension 20 seasons, which is really saying something, because episode 1 of Burrow's End was phenomenal, but what Aabria did with this episode 1 was, for lack of a better word, magic to me. But what did you think?
100% agree. Yeah, I mean, we got so much good stuff. The reintroduction of characters that had all separated apart. I mean, like, introducing people in an episode 1 of a season 2 is so much more difficult than just episode 1 of a season 1, because we are a blank slate. Now we've got like expectations that need to be met or fallen short of, depending on how you feel about Evan's sad apartment. And like on top of that, yeah, like giving us the plot hook of the season, of course, but also like just introducing new mechanics, a new system, more or less, and the wildness of what Aabria has done to everything at the table. I mean, we'll talk more about Tabby, but like Tabby, it's not a, what's the thing in the middle called? The solar bit? Someone's screaming at me in the comments right now what it's called. The wind, the bikes, like all of it. So brilliantly done.
So brilliantly done, and we're going to break everything down for you into 2 main categories. We have Misfits and we have Magic. Shocking, I know. So let's start by...
We're very clever.
We put a lot of time into the M words, just like Aabria does, clearly. So first, let's talk about the Misfits of episode 1, aka the cast and the NPCs, and let's start with a big round of applause for Aabria, because I think Aabria made so many interesting choices in how the story of episode 1 unfolded, but one of my favorites was how she brought new and old NPCs back into the game by picking them all up in the middle of something and not like a long-winded, fresh intro into anybody. It felt like I was meeting people on the street versus being introduced to someone by a friend, and it gave so much energy to an episode structure that can sometimes be a little bit like cut and dry or cut and repeat to follow through. And I was like, Aabria, you freaking know how to give some energy to these players and to us through what you do. So big round of applause for me to Aabria for that.
Aabria deserves flowers, and you gave some to her.
We sure did. Thank you to the $4 in YouTube AdSense, because they went straight to flowers for Aabria Iyengar. Listen, we've been saying for months on this podcast that Aabria deserves her flowers. So when given the chance, I was actually going to do it for all of us. So flowers delivered and actually incorporated into the show a little bit. You can find the clip over on TikTok. But with that said, giving Aabria her flowers for episode 1. I do have the scoop from Aabria on episode 2, which I'll drop at the end of this episode.
Ooh, exciting. I think you have not told me. This is exciting. Yeah. I love, I mean, it also, like, it mirrored season 1 so well of them, like, getting birds instead of, like, owls to bring them back into the story. But yeah, everyone has moved on into such distinct and different ways that feels true to the characters and yet so upsetting from how the holiday special ended, of like, what's the world gonna look like? And it's like, turns out it's hard to change the world. So like, some of us have just quit to go play college basketball. Some of us are living in the saddest apartment that's ever existed, and some of us are friends with Tony Danza. Like, it's and some of us should take their chipmunk outside more often. Every swing by the players, absolutely fantastic. And yeah, just huge kudos to Aabria for making the world feel so lived in the 3 years that we have been away from it, both literally and figuratively, and I guess actually literally and literally, also giving us such an urgent call to action of like, hey, we gotta go. World's broken.
World's broken, and we are freaking fixing it this season. I loved it. Let's talk about the Misfits one by one and talk about some of the choices each of them made that we loved in this episode. Let's start with Lou, who was the first character that we re-entered this world with. As you said, he was kind of taking a step away from magic, but still had some magic elements in his
He's got his magic basketball. He tried to do magic. So funny.
That was my favorite Lou choice of the episode, was the trying to do magic with the Temu ordered basketball toy. I thought that was so smart. Like, talk about a sniper line from Lou Wilson to just like start things on a high note. Absolutely ate it up.
Yeah. Lou, they're so good. And, you know, like, I mean, obviously we have to talk about that, like, obviously Worlds Beyond Number and everything else that has happened in the intervening 3 years since then. Like, Lou, Erica, Aabria, and Brennan all have so much more storytelling experience together that, you know, like, they, of course, they're like completing each other's sentences basically in terms of storytelling, because they're brilliant. And I will say, like, I did just mention 4 of the 5 people at that table. Danielle does not like fall short, holds her own, maybe even outshine.
In last week's episode, we talked about how we thought Danielle had an interesting hill to climb this season, being the only one not on the Worlds Beyond Number podcast. I actually thought she had the strongest story arc of any of the characters in episode 1. We find her in such a different place, physically, mentally, emotionally, than where we left her at the Christmas episode. She's such a strong, independent creator who's also having this like midlife crisis about who she is and what she wants to do. And I don't know anyone who would find that story arc relatable at all.
Not on this podcast.
Definitely not on this podcast. No, but I ate it up. I thought it was so hearty and realistic and fun, but still so baked in that like cleverness that she brings to the character. So I truly thought it was an outstanding reintroduction, and I thought it was so undercuttingly funny in a way that on the second watch back I was like, oh, this is like really, really cleverly done.
Yeah. Every choice that she made was so great. Starting with being Sam Britton now, so funny. Just like, so good. But yeah, I loved the success of her talk show. In Britain's Got Magic, that is not a talent show or a magic show. Absolutely brilliant comedy choices. The decision to have Tony Danza, of all people, singing, not promoting anything, just
not
there.
Not promoting anything, just doing 20 musical numbers solo.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, that, even though that was, Danielle was third, right? Like, Erica was second, like, if I'm remembering correctly, like, even though, like, she only started, like, she came in third, goodness, did that impact the rest of the episode. It was just nonstop talk about Tony Danza and Britain's Got Magic and how it's going. But yeah, that's so smart to, like, put one person who, yeah, of course, like, you have magic. You could be successful at things it would make sense that you could make a career out of something when you have literal magic.
Yep, for sure. And the play on it being Britain's got magic, but it's not the entity, like the franchise got talent. It's like just a talk variety show.
Yep.
Very, very funny. Very, very funny. But let's talk about Erica and how we have a totally different character to play with. Tell me your thoughts on who Erica brought to the table this game.
I mean, look, we know Erica, like, obviously if you're listening to Worlds Beyond Number, Erica is not shy of making a flawed character and making them exceptionally compelling. And oh goodness, did we see that in prime display of a familiar begging to go outside because you're trapped in a virtual world nonstop. Also a thing we definitely can't relate to on this podcast. We don't spend too much time on screens. Erica really brought, like, I think something so interesting in terms of character choice, which of course they did. I mean, they always do, but like such a brilliant character choice to make Kay into that recluse who has, I'm not entirely clear what they do. I guess like what Kay is doing, but like good, presumably for the world. But yeah, how are you feeling about Kay after whatever that was?
I'm right there with you in terms of I love how mysterious pieces of Kay are after episode 1. I love that we didn't get everything on a silver platter, and it kind of was given to us in a way that of all the characters we're going to question Kay the most right now. I loved how it paralleled season 1, episode 1 introduction, because we found Kay, on the internet forums and like deep in the archives of the internet and like kind of chronically online. And it was the same story starting season 2. It's the same kind of setting, same kind of behaviors, just a more grown, experienced, educated, matured, maybe a little bit more focused version, which is so true to like that stage of life and how different you are after 3 years and after you go to school or like you have a life experience that makes you grow a little bit in a different way. I really thought it was clever, and I loved in the adventuring party how Erica was like, Aabria was pitching me on things like basically right up until we started. Like I love how it seems like even they are trying to find pieces along the way, and I'm interested to see how that carries through, where some of the other characters maybe have more like clear things they're going to grow through immediately, or like a couple character arcs and points that are going to come maybe sooner than later. Kay's is much more ambiguous, which I think is a nice balance at the table as well.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then you have Sad Boy Fall Anthem, Evan Kemp, right there pulling up the rear.
Right out of the gate, Erica's doe eyes go to Brennan just being as sad as possible. Like,
Brennan
was
good. Ready. He was ready with that sad, detailed, meticulously sculpted scenario to find Evan in, which I give so much kudos to Aabria for like knowing the type of player Brennan is and giving him space to be like, hey, you set the tone and you tell us, because I know you have it. So it's better if you lead and we kind of like follow in tandem with that. It felt very giving in a way that really helped all of us actually get to the kernel of truth with Evan, versus some of the other characters had much more built around them to play in and kind of reintroduce us.
Yeah. I mean, every choice I love. I love that Evan is helping still, of course, with like the magical world, but is working at a petrol station. Like, what a choice. And like, and wants to make sure he doesn't get fired. Like, still in that like food insecurity mindset of like, but I can't lose my job. I understand that I might be about to go save the world, but I can't lose my job because that's how I eat my sad dinners by myself in my sad apartment.
Blow up twin air mattress.
Yeah.
I loved, if you've watched the adventuring party, Aabria has that incredible line about like, it's clear Evan doesn't invite anybody over. And then a different version of what Aabria says is basically she goes for any reason.
Yeah.
There's no one coming over to that twin mattress. And I'm like, that's actually such a funny reflection on Evan. Like, he's not made any pursuits, social or otherwise, at all in 3 years. He is simply in survival mode.
Well, I mean, I think about from I mean, I think it's from the holiday special. I don't know if it's from just out of campaign 1. I think it's the holiday special where someone says like, well, high school relationships don't last, and that's news to Evan. And like, I think about that moment a lot when I'm thinking about present day Evan, of just like, yeah, that broke him for a while probably. And we got the most devastating line I think I've ever heard in an improvised actual play of, "You're looking well." Ooh. Perfect choice by Erica.
Oh,
Yeah.
So good. And I think also just such a testament to Erica and Brennan playing so much together, having so much experience developing characters together, and then revisiting that. I'm excited to see them really flesh it out, and especially amidst Erica's mysterious pieces that aren't fully fleshed out, and then having that as such a big crater between the party in this season. It's there's no two better people to kind of tackle that problem and plot. It's gonna be so good. I'm so excited.
I can't wait. Aabria has made a yet again perfect season for us, and we're 1 episode in.
We're 1 episode in. So let's talk about some of the magic that Aabria's brought in, because it's really, we've said time and time again, Aabria is pushing not just Dimension 20, but actual play television in such an interesting direction. And once again,
we got episode 1. Forget episode 2. We got episode 1. Aabria got us.
Aabria got us gagged. Yeah. Aabria got us good. There's so many pieces that Aabria did with the design of this season I'm sure we're only going to see more and more of, but we had some practical effects, some special effects, just some of the designs of the dome and the sound design of certain moments. Super interesting. So let's talk about some of the ones that really stuck out. One being the wind, which I'm not sure how many times we've seen wind in the dome, but I'm watching Never After right now, and I'm certain we haven't seen wind in at least the early seasons with the Intrepid Heroes.
I mean, never anything like that, for sure. I don't think ever anything that isn't like the Vulture dimension wind, right? Of just a projection that moves to create an illusion of wind. Not literal, there are presumably giant fans above you blasting you with air. As it was happening, I was like, is Erica doing this? Are they committing so hard that they're whipping their head to make their hair blow? And then I was like, oh no, this is happening to everyone. Aabria has pulled some shenanigans. Surprise, surprise.
For sure. And especially hard to do this in a circle set. Because obviously the dome, and we know that the dome is not actually a dome like it was in earlier seasons where it was closer to a round table with everyone around it. Now it's kind of spaced in a way where you can get the cameras in and you can get crew in a way that does not interrupt your view of the player. So it's not a perfect dome anymore. It is in fact a set. But when you have practical effects like wind hitting at different angles at different players that are already spaced out in such a way, and you're not seeing any of that on camera, I would have loved to have seen an episode 1 behind the scenes tour of how they are shooting and setting those effects, that it's still a surprise to the players.
Yeah, I mean, I think how much Aabria has done this season is so indicative that we are getting a crew roundtable at the end of the season, because they haven't done that for several seasons now, and I think it is literally just okay, well, Aabria just changed the entire game of what we do here, so we do need the crew to come in and talk about how they did wind, how they did tabby, how they did a table that has moving pieces in the center of it, way more so than anything. I mean, obviously, Mentopolis had a bit of a wheel that moved, but nothing spinning like that. It's
absolutely
remarkable.
Let's talk about Tabby, because that's another interesting piece that you can see how the seeds were planted from Burrow's End to
Tabby, my love. You mean? Yes, we can talk about Tabby.
Yes, we're gonna enter the Jordon fan club of Tabby Land. Do you want to actually set the tone for how much you love this character?
If Tabby has no fans, I'm dead. That's what I'm saying. If Tabby is the BBEG, I'm on the BBEG's side. That's where we're at for this season.
Get in the comments if you are all in on Tabby this season, and we will make sure that as Tabby evolves, we're considering all of your thoughts in our conversation. But I think this is slowly going to turn into the Tabby fan club. Hey.
Yeah, for sure. I think we mentioned it just from the preview, but we got to see it in full effect of Brennan's reaction when they're is that going to talk? And Brennan's it's going to talk. The defeated Aabria has one-upped me yet again. There is a talking holographic face. I don't know how else you describe it. A talking digital face on a tablet. So good. So good to make it a rock tablet.
One of the seeds of Tabby that was planted in Burrow's End that I see drawn through is how you had the voice recordings that Carlos was doing later on in the season, where you had his voice come through and it was of obvious shock to the players to have another voice come in the way that it did and voicing an NPC, and then you have that yet again, but it's with an actual interactive set.
Yeah.
Which is
I can tell you what I know, which is a decent amount, which is a lot of pre-recorded lines from Tabby. Obviously also huge brilliance by Aabria of just be yeah, it works when it wants to, which is smart both to in the actual play sense of it can't answer all your questions every time you have a question. You're going to have to do some of the work yourself. And also in a production sense, that your head of production isn't running off to a sound booth to interact with the players if they ask it something you don't have a pre-programmed line for. But yeah, I know they have a ton of recorded stuff that they could play back. But I do believe there were some times when Carlos was sprinting away from Video Village to go record something, or maybe even just hop in live to go with the players. So we will see that develop, I'm sure. But yeah, because also obviously you can't have Carlos Luna running away from Video Village every 3 minutes to do a bit. Absolutely.
And you also can't box the character in with pre-records in a way that doesn't let it move with wherever the story is organically going. So it's an interesting dynamic that I'm sure is only going to get more twisted as the season goes on, which is very, very cool to me. Not to mention the way that when you're watching the beginning of the episode, you don't even realize that that material on the table is going to turn into something. It's just a piece of the set, just a piece of that.
Rick Perry and team has done such a brilliant job always of making a DM screen, but because they always have been so dynamic and interesting, at no point, other than the fact that we saw it in the trailer, at no point looking at that were you that part's special though, right? You were just that part makes sense. It's magic. Everything makes sense here. And then the face comes on and you're oh
God, here we go. Yeah. And when the table moved, I had that same reaction of, oh God, here we go. Because if the table's spinning and moving, what does that mean as characters make choices, right? It's really interesting watching Never After in the same moment, because that style is so post-production heavy. It's so interesting watching the way they superimpose edits and cuts to character art and things in the moments where the plot's really picking up. And I was thinking about that as I was watching the table and thinking do they have these moments in the plot where a player says or does something or does some magic and the table's going to do something in response to it. So really interesting to have more interactive elements where we had in Fantasy High, the screens and the productions made such a difference and felt so interactive. Now you have that, and you have the table also doing that in such a new way.
Speaking of character art, though, also huge shout out that Evan does not have a shadow in his character art and everyone else does. Mwah, a perfect attention to detail. Yeah, it's also good. I think we have one more magic to talk about, though, which is the Never Stop Making Magic system. Absolutely brilliant to incorporate part of Never Stop Blowing Up into Kids on Bikes and mash them together. I love that the magic dice explodes, and then when you get to that D20, you make some sort of magical ability or artifact or something, and then it resets back to a D4. That's so smart and not game-breaking in the way that Never Stop Blowing Up was, but also, that was intentional, but, to have it be able to last and not at the end of it be all right, now if he's DM, right, you need something that, resets so that doesn't happen. It's so good.
And you saw the payoff of that immediately with Erica and how that system's going to be so much fun as the characters have more and more to work with. I think there's no such thing as a perfect system to play in, but, and I feel very strongly about this, and you'll hear more about this in the episode I'm going to do just about my experience at 20-Sided Tavern, it's so important to design systems with medium in mind, because there's a difference between abiding by rules and restrictions because it's the nature of the game you're playing, and then remembering that you're also making a production that people are going to be involved in and consume in some way. And I just feel what Aabria's done with this system is such a perfect marriage, for lack of a better term, of both of those ideas. You have it honoring what Brennan built and advancing it, but you also are creating something that the payoff is for the audience and the viewer, and like the television production of it all, as much as it is the characters and like the game that is being played at the table, which is very hard to, it's harder to do than I think people give credit to, especially when you're the one holding all the information about the systems that you could use and the choices that you could make and the rules that you could follow, and you're trying to like scope it into something precise and easy for your players to work with and also for people at home to follow along with. That is a very difficult equation that Aabria both introduced very well and easily to follow. Like at no point did I feel like I didn't understand the system that was happening, versus other seasons of Dimension 20. Certainly episode 1, I'm like, okay, I think I understand what's happening, but like we'll see how it actually works once we get into it. And it had obvious immediate payoff, which was nice to see like right out of the gate.
Yeah. I will also say, ooh boy, I bet Abria's in trouble, because that is a system built on something Brennan Lee Mulligan built, which means he knows every single way to exploit it. And you already saw, you know, like, I mean, obviously, like, I half it and I succeed is not a new concept, but after watching Never Stop Blowing Up, and I don't believe anyone ever used that ability because they didn't remember that they had it, like, Brennan doing that in episode 1, I was like, uh-oh. Brennan knows how to use this. Like, it's going to be Deadeye from NADPOD, where Brennan knows the system so well that you're going to be like, oh, you broke it. You broke it in the best possible way. And I can't wait for it.
There's not a lot of people watching the season of Dimension 20 that haven't watched the previous season, that haven't watched Worlds Beyond Number, listened to Worlds Beyond Number, that haven't like seen other projects these people have done. It's really cool to make a system that's a character, to play with those people as much as the people are playing with the system. I think it's like a different kind of taste, a different kind of meal for everyone to eat up. I'm eating it up. I'm having so much fun with it already.
So much. It's so good. I can't wait for more. I can't wait for tomorrow as the day we're recording this. Who knows when you're watching it? We've got episode 2. Oh, it's so exciting. Yeah, someone literally like online was talking to me about this, how they wanted to incorporate Never Stop Making Magic into their system. I was like, I would wait until tomorrow's episode, because it feels like we're getting a lot more of like combat and magic and like things. I think we're going to get a lot stronger of a peek into how the system operates within the game in the second episode. And also, it's episode 2. Who knows what Abria's going to do? I mean,
I know what Abria's going to do.
Oh.
Chatted with Aabria a little bit about, I don't know exactly what Abria's going to do, but we were having a conversation about, we were just chatting before the show started, and of the things we were chatting about, I was mentioning that we were doing this, and I was excited to like hopefully get a chance to talk to Aabria later in the season if there's press opportunities that open up to talk to folks at Dimension 20 about what's happening. And Aabria said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit just because I don't have it recorded, so I don't quite remember, but your spoiler going into episode 2 is Aabria said, well, like, essentially, like, we'll see if you actually want to talk to me after you get episode 2, because she said, I'm very nervous for people to see what's going to happen next week.
Oh boy.
So if Abria's openly saying, like, you know, I'm concerned with what the response is going to be to episode 2, I feel like the bar is high. Like, yeah. I feel like that is a true warning, you know?
Oh, I can't wait. Now I want to watch it even more.
And when we watch it, we'll be back with a breakdown. And hopefully next time my office will be unpacked from my trip to New York, so I can be back at my desk and chatting with all of y'all with a real webcam and microphones and all the different things. But, Jordan, what else do you have going on this week that people can follow and tune into?
All Goblin Mode over on the Jordon Brown Patreon this week. You got the last 2 members of the table, Jason Wynn and Dan Casey, interviews dropping. Also, you might know them from Nerdist, interviews dropping with them at the end of the week. The Jason Wynn interview is so much fun. We spend a bunch of time. He was the assistant camera on Weird Al's music video Tacky, which is the one-shot goes down 5 stories video. It's one of the most remarkable music videos ever, and like I got to ask him all kinds of questions about it, because of course I did. Why wouldn't I? And he was like, how do you know this? And I was like, I scrolled way down your IMDb. Like, let's talk about this video that's a decade old. It's
so important to me that you had that conversation. Like, it is very important to me that you asked those questions. I think that's a brilliant use of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we talk about dogs a lot. I haven't interviewed Dan Casey yet, that's tomorrow, but Jason and I talked about dogs the interview goes off the rails in the most delightful ways.
Always a pleasure over on Jordan's Patreon to see what direction you ended. It's like Michael Scott, like I was saying before we started, you find the sentence along the way.
Yep.
Love the energy. So the link to Jordan's Patreon's below, and I'm going to post a video breaking down 20-Sided Tavern, what to expect if you have tickets, or if you're on the fence about going, a reminder that every show is different. So I'll tell you about the experience in the show that I saw and what you can expect if you're going to a show, but every show is very different, and they let you film. So I have tons of footage to show you of what the setup is like and what seats you can get. It was a blast. Aabria is meant to be on stage. I think just it's so cool seeing people in their element and seeing, people have inside jokes with an audience that no one else on stage got. Having the main villain of my show be Wubby and no one on stage understanding why the audience was laughing anytime Wubby said anything at all was a delight that only Aabria and the audience got to share together. So all the details about that will be coming to YouTube, so you can subscribe if you'd like, and that would help us make this show and keep more
and buy Aabria even nicer flowers the next time we see her on Broadway.
It's true, absolutely. Your ad dollars going directly to the Aabria Iyengar Flower Fund. I like it. And with that, we'll see you for episode 2 of Misfits and Magic here on the Dropout Drop-In. Happy spooky season, Jordan.
Happy spooky season, Liz.